Thank you all for joining us today. Excited to talk about AI agents with you all. So if you haven't met me, my name is Ryan Francis. I'm the president here and one of the partners here at LaunchPad Lab. Background is I used to be a developer, tend to focus a little bit more on technology strategy these days. Personally, very passionate about AI. You know, the last couple of years, really since ChatGPT came out back in 2022, I was actually looking at, when it came out. It's been basically exactly 2 years. Anyway, long story short, 2 years ago, ChatGPT came out. And I think, for me personally, it definitely was a wake up moment of, okay, we're in the AI age. And I think, for Ryan here, it might have been a little bit earlier than that. I know you've been involved in generative AI for over 10 years.
12 years. 2013, I joined a company called Narrative Science, which I think at the time was the only generative AI company in the world. So I kind of joke and say that I was the first generative AI salesperson in the world. I can't really prove or disprove that statement, but it certainly gives me some credibility, I think, in conversations when I say it. But it's been quite a journey. And I think 2022 is really kind of the big tipping point when all this work in AI finally became highly useful to many, many people. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So, and I think it's very rare to find someone that has over a decade of experience in the generative AI world. I think for most of us, maybe 2-3 years, and most of the experts that I talk to, they have less than 5 years experience. There's not a lot of people that have been in this space for over 10 years. So I think you have a lot to offer on just kind of your perspective, having been involved in generative AI for like over 10 years. I'd love to maybe just start off, Ryan, with, introduce yourself, maybe talk about your journey, starting with narrative science, into Salesforce. Maybe we start there.
Yeah, I guess the caveat is I'm not technical in the sense that I'm a developer. So most of my career in this space has been working with executives that were looking to implement AI almost always for the very first time. So a lot of it was becoming a guide, becoming that kind of trusted advisor of senior people looking to make an investment and have hopefully a positive outcome with value from AI. I think the main evolution, if you look at it backwards, today we really have this agentic platform with Salesforce and other companies where we've got large language models powering role-based and job-based apps, essentially, that can really take the place of a lot of the work that people don't want to be doing to free up individuals to do what they do best. Rewinding even further, the large language model effort that had been going on for many decades, and up until 2022, early 2023, it just was not good enough to add value. It was very good at producing random series of words and letters that to developers that were building it were impressive, but to the rest of us in business in the real world, it just didn't really make a lot of sense. We crossed that threshold early 2023, and prior to that, most of generative AI that was actually being deployed, which is what I was doing, were what I would call small language models, or language models that you would configure for a very specific use case. You would basically build it from the ground up, not with massive data sets or massive sets of knowledge. Rather, you're actually creating a set of rules around a data model to do something very specific, like take a spreadsheet of data and write me a financial report. Great. Now do that 100,000 times a year because the data set's pretty much the same and the rules are pretty much the same. That was not a very scalable business. It took weeks, if not months, to actually stand up what I would call an AI agent for a particular purpose. And you needed a data engineer, you had to have a prompt engineer, and then obviously working with subject matter experts to make sure the output was useful. And now, someone like me who's not technical, I can use Agentforce's platform. I can play around with our studio to build out an agent for selling a product or providing customer service. I can do that by myself, in the span of less than an hour. So I think the evolution has felt long to me, but it's felt, I think, very fast to people who haven't been spending the last 12 years in this space. So, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, it's you have this sort of tectonic shift in both capability of the underlying model, but then also ease of deployment. I think one of the things that I've seen over the last 2 years, ChatGPT comes out November of 22. And that was sort of the start of this new kind of wave. But what we're seeing now is the result of this scaffolding that's been built over the last 2 years. I think Salesforce has invested obviously tons of energy in creating scaffolding on top of these large language models. And I think that's really where businesses can start to see the value in the underlying LLMs is when they start to utilize something like Salesforce that has built a lot of scaffolding to make those large language models easy to sort of bring into their workflow, bring into their service teams, their sales teams, their marketing teams, but B, like kind of take care of all the stuff around security and guardrails and grounding and all this kind of stuff. So to me, I think what's exciting about Salesforce and what you guys are doing with Agentforce in particular is this sort of scaffolding that you've erected over the last 2 years on top of these powerful large language models. So I think, why don't we talk a little bit about Agentforce? Yeah. And maybe you could just give the audience like kind of a primer on, especially if folks haven't really heard of Agentforce, just a primer on, what are agents? How is that different from, say, ChatGPT? And what is Agentforce?
Yeah, I think to maybe zoom out before we get into kind of the Salesforce piece of it, the main thing that I think prevented large language models and ChatGPT from being enterprise grade or adopted by a lot of businesses was two things. One, you have to put these things somewhere in the flow of work. So ChatGPT obviously exists outside of most business systems that people use today, whether that's CRM or their HR systems, finance systems, whatever those are. So we weren't really placing these language models somewhere that business people were spending most of their time. And on the back end, there's not a data model connected to large language models that's specific to your business unless you either custom plug in a data model into a large language model, or in Salesforce's case, we're actually just integrating the LLM into the place that literally tens and tens of millions of people, they go every day to log in for their sales work, their marketing work, collaboration with Slack, their analytics work with Tableau. So I think with Agentforce, we're essentially, like you said, scaffolding. We're not requiring any business to build something new. You don't need to custom train a model. There's no custom integration required. We're just plugging it in pretty much everywhere so that the jobs that people use Salesforce products to do day in, day out, you can now augment a whole bunch of the tasks that I would say most of the time people don't want to do anyway. You can now automate and augment that work using Agentforce. So these are purpose-built, purpose-configured agents that all of our clients can set up inside of Salesforce, where the large language model, all of the compliance standards like SOC 2 and all the different regulatory standards, all of that is built in. So if you've already signed, a security agreement where you've signed off on Salesforce's security protocols, there's not like another layer you have to sign off on to use Agentforce. It's already meeting all of those standards. So in the most boring way, we've basically figured out all the plumbing, all the regulatory, all the legal stuff, the integration points so that our clients don't have to. So large language models are powering every Agentforce capability that we're coming to market with.
Yeah, and I think probably one of the questions, for me as a business owner, when I look at through my own lens as a business owner of, am I going to release, say, a customer-facing agent? I think one of the concerns I hear and would have myself in that lens is, is this agent going to be good enough to represent my brand? Is it going to be good enough to give my customers a good experience? I think we've all probably had experiences with chatbots at this point that have been subpar. I mean,
Yeah.
Certainly the chatbots pre-GPT were pretty bad. Those rule-based kind of chatbots were, where you're just like, if you're on the phone, you're just hitting 0 1,000 times, or if you're on the chat, you're like, let me talk to a human. I think it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about, like, do we think we've reached a level of quality here where these agents can deliver a great experience in a customer-facing capacity? I don't know if you want to share any thoughts on that. I definitely have some thoughts on it as well, but.
Yeah, I think you should spend most of the time talking about this because you're the technical person that understands the under the hood. But no, I think the one thing I would just state before you jump in, you have to ask yourself, like, what are you comparing to? If you're comparing it to old school chatbots, no question. Obviously, that hurdle is pretty low to jump over. If you're comparing, will a AI agent have higher quality at scale than a person or a team of people? I think you have to just define the problem you're looking to solve, because people don't scale well. Training individuals to follow your brand and represent your brand at scale, that's very difficult. I mean, you've got good support people, you've got bad support people, you've got really good call center, contact center reps, you've got people who aren't as good. I think the one thing with the AI agent is when you get it to a level of quality that you believe is good, that is the quality that every single experience that you will give your customers, it's consistent at scale.
Yeah.
So I think that's the bar we have to get over. But as far as technically speaking, I think you should jump into that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think what I've seen with these deployments in the past with, I would say pre-Agentforce, because a lot of folks were trying to do these chatbots early on before the scaffolding really existed that Agentforce is providing now. But what I saw a lot of times was these agents not really having the same knowledge, information, context that a human would have performing that same role. And so one of the things I think is important to keep in mind when you're trying to deploy let's just use like customer service as an example. You're trying to deploy a service agent. You got to kind of think about and imagine that the AI agent you're hiring is like a new employee. Like it comes with, these agents come with raw intelligence, IQ. They're beating humans on almost every standardized test at this point, which is pretty crazy. So they have this like raw IQ, but they lack some very critical things that you have to feed it. One would be context and knowledge about your organization, about how that customer support agent does its job.
Yeah.
Another would be data access, right? Like if a customer is reaching out to check in on their order, that agent needs to be able to access the database of orders, right? To go search that order, find it, and then be able to actually service the customer. So I think what's really intriguing to me about Agentforce is that in order for the agent to have the same context, the same data access, like you need that customer data to be accessible by the agent. And so having the agent be in Salesforce, accessing that Salesforce data, I think is a pretty game-changing architecture to enable like actually good service experiences and other other type of agent experiences like sales, for example, as well. But so we could probably talk a little bit more about like some of the challenges that come in when doing that technically. But I guess like Ryan, I'd be kind of curious to hear too from you on. When you think about the sort of the raw underlying capability, just kind of for you personally, like, do you have more, would you say people in general have more or less confidence in it than you do? And, any tips for people to get more comfortable, with it?
Yeah. I think for me, the confidence level that our client base in the market, it's rapidly accelerating because normally when companies like Salesforce launch a product, there'll be kind of like a multiple month lag where we announce something and we say, hey, within 3 months, you can start testing it, or, the release will be next quarter. We launched Agentforce at the exact same time that we announced it. At Dreamforce, I think we had 10,000 agents built, or 10,000 people building agents. So the best way to gain confidence in my mind is just go build it. Go build one yourself, and you'll see for yourself how good these things are and how easy it is using Salesforce to spin these things up. You can do it for free, meaning if you have the version of Salesforce that is the enterprise grade version, we don't charge for you to go in and actually build out agents yourself. So I guess that's one thing, is don't take my word for it. I can't tell you exactly how your company should use agents. Every company is a bit different, but if your business has not started building out proof of concepts already, then you're probably behind. But if you want to get that confidence, and honestly just figure out maybe where there are gaps, because if there are use cases that aren't good fits for Agentforce today, my guess is it's likely due to either you've not loaded or connected the right data into the data cloud infrastructure, or potentially it's a use case that's fairly high risk, meaning something in banking or something in healthcare, something in government where you're interacting with people around their taxes and how much money they get back. Anywhere where someone's really going to have a high leverage moment with an agent, just a different level of obviously testing and trust needs to go into that. But there is hundreds of use cases today that you could investigate and start launching that don't kind of fit that mold of a high risk type use case.
Yeah, I actually have a slide. I just pulled this up because you're talking about sort of what are some of the criteria you got to think about when you're trying to figure out where do we start with this? Where's a good place within the company to maybe put some AI and drive some value? So, at LaunchPad, we have a framework that we use. We've been using this the last couple of years as we've been doing these AI projects. And it's really a 4-step process. And the start of it is this like work selection process. How do you have all this work happening in your business and you're trying to augment that work with AI? Where do you start? How do you pick the right work for the AI to tackle? And I think within that work selection, there's really like kind of 6. I mean, there's a variety of criteria, but 6 key criteria that we found you sort of have to look at and assess to figure out, is it a good case for AI or maybe not a good case? And so you mentioned risk. We actually have that on here, risk, right? Like, if you have a potential work that is high risk, you're dealing with maybe someone's life on the line, or super high risk scenario. Think healthcare, and I know in finance oftentimes there's some high risk scenarios there. But I think outside of risk, there's the first thing that you have to look at, I think, is like complexity. So we want to look for cases where it actually requires intelligence, right? Because if intelligence is not really needed, if you can actually pre-program a set of rules,
right?
What I've found is that it's probably cheaper to just pre-program the rules because of the fact that these AI models do use like a lot of compute.
So so you're saying like in an app, if there's a button that you build, you want to know exactly what's going to happen when you click that button. It's 100% certain every time. Cheaper, safer, just program it instead of having like AI drive that customer journey or something.
Yeah, and I think like service is a great example of something that requires intelligence. You have a request coming in, and that request is, the way it's typed out is never going to be the same. Someone's just typing in, "Hey, I need help," or whatever, and so you need intelligence to process that request to understand what they're asking in the context of what they're asking. But yeah, exactly, like a button. Where someone inside your company is hitting a button and something's happening and it's always the same flow, probably makes sense to just pre-program that, right?
When I saw this slide the first time, I think the way I interpreted it, kind of when I, again, zoom out, if it's a good case for AI and you're saying it's a bad case for AI on the right-hand side, to me, I read the right-hand side is still good for a human. So like this is how you should be looking at. So it's like if it's a good case for AI or it's a bad case if it's bad for AI today, that means leave that work to humans. But when I do talk to executives, and to me this is like a CEO level conversation because they're having to think about how do we transform our company over the next 5-10 years when you can take all this work that our company does and you can bundle together all the work AI can do into agents, whether that's one agent with multiple skills or many different agents that have their own kind of discrete skills. There's a whole bunch of work that we're just going to say, let the AI agents do it because you know how much it's going to cost. It's probably a transaction type fee per transaction for each kind of experience with AI. So from an finance perspective, you know exactly how much that work's going to cost you.
Right.
And as that work goes up over time, the model of that
economics.
it's actually probably going to get cheaper over time.
Yeah,
right. Because competing models and all the different data centers that Elon and others are building, Moore's law, right?
Yeah.
So the cost of that capital is going to be becoming lower and lower. But there's almost always going to be work that we should be thinking of as human work.
Yeah.
Especially today, because I think this is very futuristic part of the conversation. But I love this criteria and this framework because I think it's a good way for people to think about what should we leave today for people, but where should we be hyper aggressive in just finding tasks that we can kind of hand over to AI agents.
Yeah. And I think this intelligence one is the reason I put this in here is that I think a lot of people think, okay, the AI is going to take the stuff that doesn't require intelligence, but I would actually argue that, if you have stuff that really doesn't require any intelligence, you probably should just pre-program that. It'll be cheaper for you. It'll be more consistent. It's not a probabilistic system. It's just a rule-based. And so you actually do want to look for the things that require intelligence, but you're looking for within that, you're also looking at the things that are more task size. So not necessarily having an AI agent go perform a whole project for you,
right?
But more so
like a multi-step.
A task would be, in the case of service, a case comes in, we need to resolve the case. That's a task. Resolve the case is a task, right? Versus a project might be go figure out how to grow the business 10% or something. So I think this framework has been really good for us in how we're sort of looking for good cases for AI. Look for where there's intelligence needed, its task size, where there's frequency, because frequency, what that translates to is value. Like if you have this thing happening a lot, you have a lot of cases coming in every month, and you can take a lot of those cases off your team's plate. That's going to have a lot of value, right? Same with the time consuming, the duration of it. So yeah, I mean, as it relates to the service agent, I think that's why Agentforce probably was, I'm speaking for you a little bit here, but why you guys launched maybe the service agent first is such a good candidate for this because, complexity is high. You need intelligence. The tasks, it is task size stuff. You're dealing with cases, right? You do have frequency here. Lots of support cases that businesses have to resolve and deal with. They can be time consuming. Like it can be a lot of work to resolve those cases, a lot of back and forth with the customer. And usually support teams have good documentation. Usually they've kind of defined, here's our guidebook on customer support. So yeah, I think like service agents, from my perspective, are a really good low hanging fruit for this technology. I think Agentforce went GA 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. It's a really great time to jump into this and build out a service agent with Salesforce.
Yeah, I think the principles of what a good use case are to start with haven't changed in the 12 years that I've been doing this. High volume of repetitive tasks is one, but also where do you have a lot of people doing the same thing over and over and over and over again?
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you can free them up, what you find is the best people will start to take on more work, or they'll take on more complex work. And if you free them up from the stuff they don't want to do, burnout goes down, quality of work goes up, creativity goes up. You find out, hey, let's actually run this process differently because I've had time and energy to actually think about the process instead of just doing the same thing over and over and over again. I'd also say that companies that sell a lot of the same thing or a lot of products in the same homogenous category, those are good examples. Like if you sell cars or real estate or insurance, the amount of variability across your client base is going to be a lot lower than a business that sells hundreds of different products across dozens of different categories, right? Because it's hard to build one agent, even using large language models, that can handle so much complexity and do it for every category that you operate in. So I think those are just some principles of how to identify a good use case.
Yeah, for sure. I think one topic that might be interesting for folks is, I know you spent the last couple of years at Tableau. I think that, everyone's kind of heard of the service agent use case, but I think you and I have seen some more interesting use cases over the last couple of years, or more out of the box use cases, if you will. Maybe talk about some of the things that you're seeing just in terms of data analytics and sort of the data analyst agent use case.
Yeah, so I think, again, zooming out, if you look at the world of analytics, the best platforms, Tableau and others, at most they're able to get 30% of a business using their tools on any given day or week, right? And it's not because people don't care about data or they don't need data to do their job. Mainly it's because the interface that we give people, it's just not intuitive. There's a hurdle you have to cross to figure out, okay, how do I discover what's going on in this data set, or how do I interact with this visualization? They're not necessarily interfaces that are designed for, the executive or a manager, somebody on the front line, that's on the floor of a factory or a sales floor. Those tools aren't necessarily built for them. And so I think the big opportunity that agents provide in the insight world is, how do we give people information, and I use the word information, not data, in a form that is natural to them, that will just show up wherever they already spend their time, and do so in a way that will just make sense. So instead of asking people, hey, go learn more data skills, go learn how to use Tableau or take this training, we're actually saying, let's just make the systems easier. So I'm not saying make them dumber, but let's bring the machine that's giving all the insight, and let's bring the machine closer to the business user, instead of asking the business user to learn or go somewhere they don't really want to go. So in our world, Tableau's always been on the forefront of investing in AI. I mean, they bought the company I was at, Narrative Science, 3 years ago. They've had very good natural language processing capabilities. They've launched Tableau Pulse. Where I think this is going, and Tableau Agent is now in the process of being released, is a couple of places. One, every aspect of Tableau will be composable and portable, meaning we call it headless BI. So in Tableau, you can prep data, you can load data, you can bring it into the interface, and then you can build a visualization. Maybe you're just someone who needs to view data, and you have to log into a spreadsheet, into a dashboard and see it, or maybe it's embedded somewhere that you already work. With headless BI, all that can be completely stripped away, and Tableau can just show up when you need it, where you need it. So if I'm sitting inside of Slack and I'm a managing director of a management consulting firm, Tableau might just track data for me for all my clients and tell me, hey, something's going on in this account, and there's a lot of momentum happening at the data level. We think you should know about it. Cool. Okay. Well, what's driving that change? Let me just tell you. And so to me, it's just like a person in Slack telling me what's going on inside of my accounts. And instead of just giving me the insights, it's also going to say, I've got 3 ideas of what you could do about this. You could, we have a demo we can show here if you want to pull it up.
Yeah, let me get that pulled up.
But I think that's what really excites me, is kind of integrating the analytics workflow into the rest of the world, instead of asking people to come in. Here we go. So this is the example I was showing you, where I'm a managing director. I manage the automotive sector, and on my Slack app on my phone, before I get on a flight, it tells me, something's going on inside of the Ford Motor account.
So this was basically a notification saying,
exactly,
hey, Ford, the account health has improved 15%.
Exactly.
Okay.
Tableau's keeping track of metrics for me. It tells me when something's going on. It then brings me into a Slack channel, and so the AI agent has teed up already this metric. So it's saying the score for Ford has gone up, and it's being driven by a couple of things. So it's a multi-factor analytic, basically, where it's looking at multiple things. One, white paper downloads for this account, they're increasing. That's pretty interesting. I kind of knew that already. There's news headlines that are increasing. I'm paying attention to that as well. But it looks like there was actually a new hire that runs Ford supply chain that just started. That's driving this score higher. That's very interesting. So the agent's going to give me the option to learn more about that. So I'm going to say, hey, do some research on my behalf. So it's going to search LinkedIn, the internet, wherever kind of you want it to go look. And it's going to come back and tell you, we didn't just search third-party data. We actually checked your CRM. There's a partner at your firm that has a relationship with this guy. And the partner's name's Lindsay. Do you want to talk to Lindsay about that? Great. So you can kind of see how this workflow is going beyond just telling me something interesting and it's giving me the next step without having to go anywhere else. It's right in the workflow.
Yeah, so you just went from, first of all, you had this like proactive agent who was on the lookout, on the hunt for some type of an insight. It figured out, okay, hey, your account, Ford, it improved in account health. Let's see, here are the reasons why. And through that, it also drove an insight to you around, hey, there's this new employee start in there, like, and you have a connection, mutual connection inside your company to that employee. Let's connect you guys and get. So, I mean, that is incredible.
Yeah,
right?
I think comparing maybe where we were a couple of years ago with chatbots to today, this is an example of an AI agent that is multi-skilled, right? So it started off as a data analyst. So it's giving me an insight by tracking metrics in Tableau, but then it's saying, hey, I can actually introduce you to another person on your team, almost like an executive assistant would. Do you want me to create a channel or set a meeting? It can also do research for me. So it's going out and looking at the internet and pulling back only the relevant information that I need. So with Salesforce, because we have the data cloud on the back end, it's able to kind of combine so many different skills into one experience where we're not going into different databases. We're not going into different systems because the whole platform is Salesforce. All of the data is in one place in Data Cloud. This experience feels like kind of a super agent that has multiple skills all in one place.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's definitely. I think that's a good call out with Data Cloud, and just like, to me, I think the architecture that they've set up with Agentforce really hits the nail on the head.
Yep.
Just as far as like, to me, the three ingredients. I actually have a slide on this somewhere too.
Yeah, maybe just to close the demo out.
Let's do that first.
The demo's almost done. So
first.
The other skill that this agent has, it's actually call it like a sales development rep or a marketing analyst. It's going to take basically all the information we know about John, and it's going to write an email that I can send. Although it doesn't look perfect, I give the agent some feedback. I'd like to invite John to some webinars. It's going to rewrite that email for me, and now I can just send the email directly in here. So, from insight directly through me doing research and then contacting this person with the perfect email, that's maybe 5 minutes, right? All because we combine different skills into this one agent experience. And I think for Tableau, some clients are going to have Tableau agents where they're going to use Tableau agents to build out dashboards, create experiences that are very analytic focused. I think more common is you're going to see other agents that just have like an analytic skill that's part of their overall capability set. It's not necessarily an analytic agent, but we're going to give another agent just the ability to do analysis using Tableau powering it on the back end. That's what we're seeing a lot of already, working with other teams for our clients.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like this is going to allow for more democratization of data analysis, because basically you don't have to know how to go construct a SQL query or do join tables and stuff like that. I still don't even really know how to do joining tables together. I let my developers figure that out. I mean, so I think this has got to be one of the more interesting use cases for business leaders. Is like, hey, can I have an AI agent that I can just collaborate with and get insights from? Hey, what's going on with this account? Or I saw a revenue, dipped in this vertical or this like customer base in the last 30 days. Like, what's driving that? What can we do to course correct that? So definitely think Tableau has a really interesting opportunity, connecting Tableau with CRM to do that. I mean, it's really intriguing for sure.
And we're going to jump to, we have a lot of questions popping up, which is awesome and crazy because we kind of forget there's people watching this. I think the last thing that I would say about the Tableau piece is before AI agents plus Tableau, the way that you would make your company smarter or more data driven is you would pay a lot of money, do a big data project, build out a bunch of dashboards, hope people use them, right? With AI agents, you can now basically inject knowledge directly inside your company without having anybody change anything they're doing. Everyone just keep doing what you're doing. Knowledge and insight will just show up where you work. And I think if you look at kind of the research, the companies that actually are the most data driven, they outperform the companies that aren't, financially speaking. So this seems like pretty low hanging fruit to spend a little bit of money, upgrade your Tableau license, get an AI agent, and now your whole company's more data driven. That will help you in market for sure. I cannot believe how many questions we have.
Yeah, for sure. Well, why don't we, let me, think one of these questions is really good. So all these questions are good, but I was going to talk through this anyway. you guys see any examples of agents being able to pull data from external platforms? I'm sure this may be possible, but under the hood, would this be an API call each time? How do you basically give agents access to information? And I think this does kind of come into one sort of topic I wanted to talk about. Let me see if I can share my screen again. This slide here, I think, is really critical. So in order to make an AI agent that is actually successful, I think you've got to do these 3 steps, and you've got to do them really well. And this question about data and data integration is really about giving it access. So I mentioned earlier, you have this, think about the AI agent as like, I just hired an employee. They have, maybe this employee is, you really like the talent of the individual, really intelligent, but now you got to train the employee. So you got to give it knowledge. You got to give it the sort of the context about here's how to go do your job. In the case of service, like that might be a CSR guidebook, right? Here's how you handle certain inquiries. Here's our best practices. This middle one, giving it access. This is really about giving that agent the ability to query data. And that data is probably a lot of it's going to be in Salesforce. But what I've seen so far with my clients is they almost always have data in other places.
External data.
Yes. And so
his question was, how do you access that? Is it API or what's the?
So what Agentforce did that's, I think, really smart is they created this concept of agent actions. It's a very flexible system. So what you can basically do is expose actions to the agent, give them a library of actions that the agent can take. So if a customer is asking for, if a customer is asking for, to check in on the status of their delivery, we could have an action, check orders, check delivery status, and that action could fetch data from Salesforce or could do an API call out to, say, a 3PL API to check on the status and where that order is in transit, right? And so that actioning system, you can use flows in Salesforce, which flows are super powerful. Flows are just this really powerful no-code system for creating automations. So the fact that you can have that action actually fire off a flow kind of opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Based on the questions I'm seeing, it sounds like we should do a follow-on where we actually do a demo webinar where we actually walk through creating an agent. End to end. Because I think there's a lot of questions about how it works. The only thing I would add to that is a lot of our clients are now starting to use Data Cloud, where instead of having API calls that would go out kind of on real-time basis, you can have zero copy data sharing set up. So let's say you have a lot of data in Snowflake, you've got a lot of data in Salesforce, maybe you got some data in Workday or wherever else. You don't have to load your data into Data Cloud, but you can basically set up a zero copy connection where the data actually does not move where it sits. You're just giving sort of secure access in real time to the Data Cloud infrastructure. So no API calls needed. Not every client is in Data Cloud today, so I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but that is becoming a more common kind of data backbone for agent.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And I think it was smart for them to lead off with, because I remember Data Cloud was the focus, maybe a year or two ago, and it was really the lead in, and I think a foundational to do agents well. Having that data lake concept right there with the vector database is definitely important. I think, with the actions concept too, I think there's 2 different kinds of sort of types of actions, right? You're going to have read actions, like I need to go get information. And that's really where Data Cloud comes in. Any type of any data that the agent needs to read, you can have in Data Cloud and pulling into that conversation. But there's also going to be scenarios where the agent needs to go perform write action. So that might be creating an order or refunding an order. Not not that you would necessarily want the AI agent automatically refunding orders for you, but I think that's really where those flows would come in. Is you think about Data Cloud probably more on the read side, and then flows maybe more on the act or the write side of things.
Yep. Let's see. That question's kind of the same one we just answered. Okay, here's one. For companies that are maybe in the early days of figuring out what they're going to do for Agentforce, why Salesforce, I guess, is kind of the short question that the person's asking here. It's like, why is Salesforce better than another firm like Microsoft or something else? I'll let you answer that because I'll probably come off too biased. But as a tech consulting firm with a whole lot of companies that you interact with and integrate with, like where do you see the advantages or strengths of Salesforce?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's there's a couple things. The obvious one and the big one is so many companies have so much of their customer data already in Salesforce. So being able to give that agent an easy way to interface with that data in a secure way with the right guardrails and masking of information before it goes into the LLM and things like that. I think it's just it just accelerates time to value. It improves the quality of the system that you are creating. And I think for me, like if you're going to go through the process of creating a service agent and augmenting your team, do it well. Set it up where that agent has the same affordances that you're giving your humans. It has the training, it has the data access, and it has the guardrails. And those are the three things that I think Agentforce has done very well is making sure that the system includes all of those.
Yeah.
I've seen other systems not have all those things in it or not do those three things really well. So yeah, that would be I think that at the end of the day, it comes down to customer data and it is critical for the agents to be successful. Salesforce has that data, and I think it gives them a major leg up.
Yeah, I think the only things I would add to that, one, there's always going to be a need for the human expert to know how to set these things up correctly and make sure you're using every piece of Agentforce to its full ability. We have an 11 million person Trailblazer community that if you listen to Mark Benioff, he's saying that every single employee, every partner, everyone's becoming an Agentforce expert right now, right? So I think there's companies like LaunchPad that are experts in this already, and not a lot of other companies in the world building this stuff can say that. But yeah, no, I think you handled that one well. And then there's a question about Tableau. I guess, how would you differentiate the Tableau agent capabilities or AI capabilities relative to Power BI or Microsoft? Get that question a lot. I think the easiest way to kind of think of that is everything on the Microsoft world, they're very disparate products. You've got a CRM product, you've got a cloud product in Azure, you've got an analytics product, you've got work tools like PowerPoint and Word. They're all very good at very point needs. But if your company needs to kind of blend all these workflows together, and instead of thinking of software as these separate, disparate things that you use for different purposes, and now we're building agents, like I said before, that can basically combine multiple skills into one. Don't just do data analysis, do data analysis and guide my actions, automate my next steps. You really need to have the workflow tied into a platform where a lot of your people work today. And I think that's one of the beauties of Tableau is it's going to be fully integrated throughout Agentforce, and it's going to be fully integrated throughout the CRM platform as well as Slack. So that's a huge leg up. I would also kind of argue that when you have a business like Tableau, where we're a separate business unit, we've got thousands of people obsessed with the success of our Tableau customer and Tableau customer user base. Other vendors don't necessarily have that. They view analytics as an app, and it's a tool that they give to their customers, but there's not a team of thousands, even hundreds of people focused on just that user persona. And that's not the case with Tableau. We're very obsessed with our customers' success. And like I said, the Tableau bought Narrative Science, so a lot of our PhD and engineer product people, they're the ones bringing these new agent capabilities to market for Tableau.
I think real quick, I just want to quickly mention kind of our process at LPL. If anyone is looking to kind of move into Agentforce, kind of what does the flow look like? I can't figure out how to share the screen. Here we go. Let's see. I don't know where it went. I can talk through it. So essentially 4 steps, right? I think it.
You talk, I'll look.
Yeah, you look. Okay. First step is really what we would call our AI automation workshop. And so I think this is really the workshop that we run. It's usually like a half-day kind of workshop where we sit down with clients and we just really open up their business and look at where their people are, what they're doing, and we help advise on where they should focus their energy as far as implementing Agentforce. Usually, service is the obvious one right now, just with that being GA as of a couple weeks ago. And what we can do in this workshop, if a company's interested in service, is we can talk about where do we see the opportunities, that 80-20 rule within that service experience, where we can really start to augment the service team. And, usually that's looking at, I find there's usually 10 to 15 kind of topics that agents are dealing with. Usually that's like, let's pick half of those topics and start to get really good with that half. And that usually can handle a lot of the cases. So what I really advise business owners and leaders on is, you don't really have to jump right into implementation, right? Like, what you want to do is start with a workshop, have a consulting firm like LaunchPad, who can bring that outside perspective, look at your business kind of with fresh eyes, and suggest where to focus. And then from there, you can build a proof of concept. And the proof of concept can be pretty quick. I mean, we're doing these in 3 to 4 weeks. And through that proof of concept, you can really get a good sense of, okay, yeah, this is going to be really advantageous, and it's going to really take a lot of and you can actually run various cases through it. So the proof of concept is really where, I think, for a lot of software projects, you can skip that stage. You go from the workshop into like an implementation. For AI projects, I think the proof of concept is really key, because you're trying to build confidence and feasibility. You're working with a more probabilistic system than like a deterministic system. So I found that proof of concept to be a really good kind of starting point way of getting engaged. And with the agent builder that Salesforce has, it's pretty quick to get a POC stood up. The hardest part is just getting those like data sources connected, getting the knowledge sometimes explicitly written down if it's in people's heads,
right?
Or if it's all over the place. A lot of times companies don't have a unified knowledge experience yet. But then, I think, so you have the workshop, you do the POC, go into the implementation. I find that these take a couple months. I think you can get something that delivers value faster than 3 to 4 months. But I think to get something where it's like really taking a majority of cases and resolving them at a high degree of quality, it does take some time to do that well. And it really comes back to the data piece of like getting the data integration right. So if you actually have all that data already figured out, if you're really healthy with data, it can be a lot faster on the implementation side.
There's no more questions. The last thing I would just leave, because right now everything at Salesforce is about Agentforce and AI agents. We have a bunch of kind of mini Dreamforces coming around the country. I listed those out here. So I would encourage you, if you live nearby to any of these locations, take a day, take a few hours. We will be helping people, non-technical and technical, build their own AI agents on site. And we'll be demonstrating a lot of the new Tableau capabilities and pretty much everything across Salesforce. So I would encourage you to spend some time either watching online or coming in person. We would love to host you. Any parting thoughts?
I don't think so. I appreciate you joining us, Ryan. I mean, it's wealth of knowledge, and thanks for spending the time and sharing all this with the audience here. And everybody who joined, thank you for listening in. We appreciate it, and don't hesitate to reach out to me or Ryan. And
thanks a lot.